Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. And in today's video, I'm doing something a little bit fun and I'm doing a way too early 2028 presidential election prediction. This one is going to be the current Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, and the Vice President-elect of the United States, JD Vance. And this one, there's a lot of predictions you could do. Some of them are fun, some of them are pretty realistic. And Kamala Harris versus JD Vance, this may sound crazy, but could actually be the 2028 presidential election matchup, at least for right now. Of course, the election was a little bit over a month ago today, but when you look at the polling in the Republican primary, JD Vance is almost clearly the front runner in every single poll that has been taken, barring a new Morning Consult poll that has Donald Trump Jr. in it. But Vance and Trump Jr. are very close friends, so I doubt they would both run in the same race. Vance looks like he has a commanding lead on the Republican primary. On the Democratic side, yes, the election just happened, so many of the 2028 challengers are not yet well known, but Kamala Harris currently has about the same lead that JD Vance has, approximately 30 points. So in both instances, there is enough undecided vote to take out the leading candidates, but right now the leading candidates on the 2028 watch on the Republican and Democratic sides are JD Vance and Kamala Harris. So I thought it'd be fun for me to do a way too early 2028 presidential election prediction. And we don't have any polls to go off of, so this is mainly using the 2024 election results and my own personal feelings about these respective races. So first things first, I'm going to start with the states that I think will be safe for Harris and safe for Vance. I think the states of Washington, Oregon, and California and Hawaii are all going to be safe for Harris. And when I mean safe, I mean they're going to be 15% margin of victory or more for Kamala Harris in these states. So Harris gets up to 78 electoral votes with those four states. And I will just show you very, very quickly. In 2024, this state, Washington, was won by about 19 points. Oregon was about 15 on the dot. California was 20 points. Hawaii was almost 30 points. So these states for sure I think will be safe for Kamala Harris. The state of Alaska was a 14-point win for Trump over Harris. This is going to be right in the edge between being safe and likely, but I think Alaska starts out as a safe state. As well, I think the states of Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska at large, and Nebraska's 1st and 3rd districts I think will be safe. Kansas and Oklahoma I also think will be safe. Now we're starting to get into the state of Texas, which Donald Trump, after being very close in 2020, Trump won the state by 14 points. I think we might have seen a Republican resurgence in the state of Texas, where I think JD Vance would win it by over 15 points in 2028. And now going to do some more southern states which are going to be safe for JD Vance: Louisiana, Arkansas, and Missouri, as well as Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi. No really surprises here. We're going to look at a state like Colorado, which did go for Kamala Harris this time around by about 11%, 54% to 43%. This one is right on the threshold, I think, of how Harris could win it in 2028 between being a safe Democratic state and likely Democratic state. But I do think Colorado does go likely Democrat once again, like it did in 2024. Now for the state of Illinois, this one did vote for Kamala Harris by 11 points over Donald Trump. So the question is, could I see Kamala Harris doing about 4 points better in Illinois against JD Vance than she did against Donald Trump? I don't think so. I think I'm going to put Illinois in the likely Democratic column, but again, that could certainly happen as well. A state like Iowa is a 13-point win for Donald Trump. That would be a likely Republican win. Could JD Vance do 2 points better in Iowa against Kamala Harris and Donald Trump? It's possible, but I wouldn't exactly bet on it. I'm not sure, even though JD Vance is Donald Trump's vice president, and it will be after 4 years of Trump in the Oval Office, vice presidents do historically have a little bit of a tougher time winning after 8 consecutive years of the president, but Trump will only be 4 years, so I'm not sure exactly how it's going to apply. I think turnout may be a little bit lower on the Republican side with Vance than Trump, since Trump, everyone knows Trump. He certainly brings out a lot of voters, both his own and his opponents. So Vance, I'm not sure if he'll have the same luxury in that way that Trump will, but I still think Vance will do a pretty good job being Trump's VP. Ohio now. Ohio voted for Trump by about 11 points. That would be a likely Republican win. Ohio is JD Vance's home state, but I don't see how much JD Vance will do better, maybe a point better than Trump in Ohio. I think it would still probably be a likely Republican state. West Virginia, I think, would be a safe Republican state. The state of South Carolina, this state went about 18 points for Trump over Harris, so I think that will also be a safe Republican state for J.D. Vance. This is putting Vance at about 188, Harris at 107. Now we come to the state of Florida, where Donald Trump won the state 56% to 43%. This is about a 13-point win, which would still technically be a likely Republican state, but right borderline between being likely Republican and safe Republican. This is one where I actually think Florida continues to trend red. We've seen it trend red in every single election, really, since 2016. I think it's going to happen again. I think Florida does hit the 15% threshold in 2028 and is a safe Republican state. This puts J.D. Vance at 218, Kamala Harris at 107. Now we're getting into the northeastern part of the country where a lot of Democratic votes will come for Kamala Harris. We know Harris will win D.C. She'll win Maryland by over 15 points. Now we're going to look at some states that maybe could potentially get closer. Delaware was 15 points exactly for Harris versus Trump. It is possible J.D. Vance could get below 15 points in Delaware, but for now, I think it still goes about 15 points, maybe a little more, but I think it's where it's going to go on that one. New Jersey, we're going to come back to because I do want to pay that one some extra special attention. The state of New York, Kamala Harris just defeated Donald Trump here by about 12 points, so this was a likely Democratic win. New York has still been a Democratic state, but it's trended a little bit more Republican in the last 2 years. I do think New York goes Democrat once again in 2028, but I think it's going to be more likely Democrat than safe Democrat. Now getting into New England, we have Connecticut, which is 14 points for Harris over Trump. Rhode Island, 14 points, Harris over Trump. Massachusetts, this is going to be a safe state for Harris over Trump. I think you could make the argument Connecticut and Rhode Island could potentially get redder in the upcoming election with Vance on the ballot instead of Trump, but I do think they actually may stay Democratic. I think Trump is so good at turning out his base of supporters that if even just some of those votes don't turn out in 2028 for J.D. Vance in these more blue states, that may be enough for Harris to pick up a little bit in terms of the margin of victory. Vermont will be a safe Democratic state. Maine's 1st district will be safe Democratic as well. This puts about 177 electoral votes for Kamala Harris, 218 for J.D. Vance, with about 143 electoral votes remaining, and this is where we start to get to the more competitive states of the election. Starting up in Maine, since I'm already up here, we did just see Kamala Harris win the state of Maine over Donald Trump by 7 points, 52% to 45%. I don't think J.D. Vance being on the ballot instead of Donald Trump really changes things all that much in Maine. If anything, that might make the support among Republicans go down a little bit. I think Harris still wins the state of Maine statewide in a likely Democratic margin. As for Maine's 2nd district, this one Donald Trump won by about 10 points, so this is a likely Republican win. And Vance could afford to lose about 5% of support and still win it by a likely Republican margin. So barring a massive shift in Maine, I do think this district remains a likely Republican district in Maine 2nd. So that puts Vance at 219, Harris 179. The state of New Hampshire, a state J.D. Vance actually visited in the final days of the campaign, which honestly caught me surprised. I wasn't sure. The polls didn't show a very close race in New Hampshire, and yet New Hampshire ended up being only a 3-point race for Harris over Trump. New Hampshire is interesting because New Hampshire seems to have a track record of liking the more moderate of the two candidates at the presidential level. For instance, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were very close in 2016, but heavily favored Joe Biden over Donald Trump in 2020. Harris did win the state in 2024, but it was only a 3-point win. I would not be shocked one bit to see a very close race in 2028 for the state of New Hampshire between J.D. Vance and Kamala Harris. I don't think J.D. Vance is going to turn out the same level of Democratic enthusiasm as Donald Trump did in the state of New Hampshire, which could potentially even set up a closer race in New Hampshire. The question is, though, would New Hampshire be close enough for me to give it to J.D. Vance? I'm not there yet. I think, honestly, Harris would beat J.D. Vance in New Hampshire by just about 2%, maybe a little bit over, like 2.1%. One of the closest races we've seen since 2016 in New Hampshire in this election scenario, but I don't think it's ready to flip back to the Republicans at the presidential level yet, seeing as also New Hampshire hasn't gone red since, I believe, 2000 at the presidential level. I don't see why it's going to swing back to the Republicans now, but we'll have to wait and see how this scenario does play out. Now we have the state of New Jersey. New Jersey is a state that a lot of Republicans are feeling very good about after Donald Trump only lost the state by 6%, 52% to 46%. and Republicans are feeling very good and hoping to be able to contest this state in 2028. The first signs for this are going to be the 2025 New Jersey governor election. It's interesting because everything suggests the Democrats should do well in New Jersey, seeing as it's going to be an off-year election after Donald Trump just won, and typically the opposite party in these off-year elections does well. So if the Republican does win the governor's race in New Jersey in a Democratic favorite off-year election, that would be a very good sign for the Republicans. The question is, in New Jersey, have the Republicans reached their ceiling, or have the Democrats really starting to scramble? And can J.D. Vance make significant inroads more than Donald Trump did in a state like New Jersey, with Republicans contesting it more? That's going to be the fundamental question. It's hard to believe we're even having this conversation about New Jersey, to be completely honest with you. I could see New Jersey being a lean Democratic state under 5%, but I can't imagine New Jersey and New Hampshire being in the same conversation in terms of closeness and competitiveness. So I'm leaving New Jersey and likely Democrat, but the conversation, if you want to have it about New Jersey being very, very close, I am certainly willing to hear that one out. Now we're going to go to the state of Virginia. Kamala Harris just defeated Donald Trump in Virginia by 6%, like New Jersey, 52% to 46%. Another state that went Democratic for Joe Biden by over 10 points in 2020 has now swung about 4 to 5 points in 2024. This is going to be an interesting one because Donald Trump has been very, for better or worse, even though 2024 was the best Trump has ever done in the state of Virginia, he's not really the type of Republican that does appeal to a lot of Virginia voters. We did see Glenn Youngkin win the state in 2021. We see a very close competitive race in the governor's race in 2025. And maybe J.D. Vance may be able to peel away some of these voters in Virginia. In 2024, it seems Donald Trump has brought Virginia back from being a safe Democratic state into more of a borderline likely to lean Democratic state. And I would go so far as saying I could see Virginia being at 5%, like exactly. So I will put Virginia as lean Democrat, not likely Democrat, but that one I think I could see Vance making a play for, especially early on in the 2028 campaign if he were to do so. Now we're going to go to the state of North Carolina. This is a state that has been a typical swing state for many years now. Donald Trump did win the state by about 3% over Kamala Harris, 51% to 48%. And this is one where the Democrats always have a few good polls leading into Election Day in North Carolina that makes them feel confident they're going to win it. And then the actual Election Day turnout actually makes it look like more of a lean Republican state than a tilt Republican state. And for 2028, I'm sure there'll be a lot of good polls for the Democrats that show North Carolina either in range of being won by the Democrats, but I think it will be a lean Republican state like it has been for the last few elections. And until I see otherwise, I'm going to keep North Carolina as a lean Republican state, putting it somewhere around that 3 to 4% election victory for Vance in North Carolina. This puts Harris at 210, Vance 235. We're going to go to the state now of New Mexico and its 5 electoral votes. This state was a 6-point win for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump as well. I think it's in a similar boat between Virginia and New Jersey. A state Donald Trump has made more competitive, could potentially be a lean Democratic state in 2028. We're going to have to wait and see how things go in the midterm elections leading after that. But I think for now, I'm going to leave it in likely Democrat just barely. This might be like a 5.1% where it stays likely Democrat, but I do think it stays likely Democrat for now, but it's certainly worth monitoring that one. Harris is at 215, Vance at 235. Now we're starting to get into the more competitive states that we knew about going into the 2024 presidential election. Going to start out west with the state of Arizona. Donald Trump shocked everyone, honestly, winning Arizona by 5 points, 52% to 47%. 5 points is just on the edge between being a lean Republican state and likely Republican state. This one is very, very interesting. The poll showed Trump leading by about 2 to 2.5 points. Trump was able to win here by a lot. I don't think J.D. Vance loses a ton of support in 2028 that Trump had in 2024 in the state of Arizona, especially considering Trump's relationship with some of the more establishment Republicans in Arizona, such as John McCain and the John McCain family. I think Vance will probably win Arizona again, and I think he's going to win it by about the same lean Republican margin, maybe like 4.5 to 5% or so in Arizona. That puts Vance at 246, Harris 215. Nevada is very interesting because we've been waiting for a while now to see if Nevada was going to go red at the presidential level. 2022, they elected a Republican governor, and Donald Trump not only won the state of Nevada at the presidential level, he won it by 4 points, a lean Republican margin, not even a tilt one, which I do believe I predicted Trump to win it in a tilt margin, Trump won it by a lean Republican margin. J.D. Vance, I think, will be in a similar situation in Nevada, being Trump's VP. I'm not sure if he'll be able to win by the same level of support, but I think a lean Republican win in Nevada is certainly possible for J.D. Vance, and I do think Vance would start out as winning the state in a lean Republican margin. This puts Vance at 252, Harris is at 215. Now the state of Minnesota and its 10 electoral votes. This is the home state of Harris's running mate, Tim Walz. Harris defeated Donald Trump by 4 points, 51% to 47%. This would be a lean Democratic win. It's possible Republicans do put a considered effort into Minnesota, trying to make it more competitive in 2028. Only about a 4-point win for Harris, despite having the governor of the state as her running mate, could potentially be a battleground state. But I think for now, Minnesota will stay a lean Democratic state. Minnesota is flirted with being very close to the presidential level before, such as 2000, 2004, 2016, and now 2024, and is still voted for the Democrat in the next presidential election every single time. Maybe that flips, but I'm going to leave it as lean Democrat for right now. This puts Vance at 252, Kamala Harris 225. Now we have the state of Georgia and the 16 electoral votes. Georgia is a fascinating one because Donald Trump did win the state by about 2%. And of all the toss-up states, this is the one that came very, very close to really representing 2020 when you take a look inside the Atlanta suburbs. This area of the state where a lot of people are living and moving to actually did start growing more towards the Democratic side. So even though the state did flip back to Donald Trump from Joe Biden in 2020, technically the Atlanta area still did trend to the Democratic side, which could be a worrying sign for the Republicans. Still, a 2-point win for Donald Trump would put it as lean Republican. I actually think J.D. Vance starts off winning the state of Georgia by under 1 point in 2028, as 2028 could potentially be the last time we see Georgia goes for the Republicans at the presidential level. Maybe I'll be right about that, maybe I'll be wrong, but I think Vance will still win it in 2028, but I think it will be under 1%. Vance is at 268, Harris is at 225, and now it comes down to the same 3 states as this time around, although I did forget Nebraska's 2nd district. Let me address that one first. Nebraska's 2nd district did vote for Harris by about 5 points. This is right on the edge between being lean and likely Democratic, and I think it's going to be, again, probably around that 5% threshold, about a lean Democratic win. So 226 for Harris, Vance 268. Harris is the same number of electoral votes that she got in 2024. The question is, can J.D. Vance run the table in the Rust Belt states like Donald Trump did? And it's very interesting because, in a way, Trump winning the 3 Rust Belt states was not really the most conventional way of doing so. It is expected that Trump was going to win Pennsylvania as the more Republican of the 3, which that was true. But Michigan being the 2nd most Republican of the 3 battleground states was certainly not really expected. I know my prediction and many others had Pennsylvania being the most Republican, Wisconsin being the 2nd most Republican, and Michigan being the 3rd, and potentially even going for Harris. But Trump was able to win all 3. The question will be in 2028 against Kamala Harris, will J.D. Vance be able to do the same? And what will the margins be? And I would go so far as saying that Trump won the state of Pennsylvania by about 1.7%. And I do think J.D. Vance is capable of winning Pennsylvania by more than 1 point, which would put Pennsylvania as a lean Republican. I do think he will be able to do that. Michigan and Wisconsin, I could potentially see J.D. Vance's support go down. Oh, I made New York red by accident. I could potentially see it go down, but I'm not sure Harris would do enough to actually win these states. Trump did just win Michigan by 1.4%, which would be lean Republican, and Michigan by 0.9%, which would be tilt Republican. And on this one, I think it's possible Harris may win back some support in Michigan, enough where I could see it being a tilt Republican state. In Wisconsin, 0.9% would already be a tilt Republican state. I could see that one getting even smaller, but I do still think J.D. Vance would hold on, build off the Trump momentum of the 4 years that Donald Trump served as president, and win the states of Wisconsin and Michigan. Of course, this election is majorly contingent on how Donald Trump is doing as president and how the American people view his presidency, as if it's going good or bad or not. But I think right now, before Trump takes office, based on the vibes of Trump going into office, J.D. Vance winning by the same electoral map as Trump in 2024 is certainly very realistic. And it's even possible, if Trump does a very good job as president, and many Americans approve of the job he's doing, even more so than they do now, there is a potential scenario where Trump could put states like New Hampshire, Minnesota, Virginia, maybe even New Jersey potentially in play. or at very least make them less Democratic margins of victory than before. So this is something very interesting to watch for going forward, as this could potentially be the 2028 presidential matchup. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a like, click subscribe, so you get notified when I post more videos like this one and other series I'm doing in the future. And thank you so much for watching. That will do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like. And if you really liked it, please remember to click the subscribe button. And make sure you turn post notifications on so you always get notified when I post a new video. That way you never miss one. Also, please remember to share this video with your friends and family if you really like the video. And remember to stay tuned, because I'll be posting at least one video every single day leading up until Election Day. So I'd really appreciate it if you keep coming back and watching those videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.